Yes, Your Majesty. Gaga agreed as usual but felt a little regretful. As a smart strategist, it naturally knew that by following the king, it could rely on its ability to argue and scheme to gain the king's recognition the fastest. However, since the king didn't need him now, he could only use his ability to open the way. Fortunately, he was confident in his ability. There were also benefits even though this would be slower. It was safe and did not attract gossip. At the same time, Zhou also opened Gaga's attribute list. He took a rough look and realized that they were all strategists' common skills such as assessing the situation, inciting, encouragement, military planning, and policy coordination. There were also spellcaster-specific skills such as eloquence, sophistry, expression analysis, psychological estimation, and shouting to stop. He roughly read through it. After understanding Gaga's abilities, his gaze landed on the most important skill. Insight Surrender. Skill name: Insight Surrender. Skill quality: Special Legendary Tier Advanced Grade. Skill description: a unique derivative ability bestowed by the Lord Talent. Insight Defection. Only spellcaster who had Insight Surrender could be sent into the enemy camp by his lord to carry out Insight Surrender. Created by this Lord Talent can master and use it. Spellcaster who had Insight Surrender could be sent into the enemy camp by his lord to carry out Insight Surrender. During the Insight Surrender mission, Spellcaster had a 10% chance of making all the members of the enemy lord's camp his loyal subordinates. Note 1. Currently, spellcasters can at most recruit lords below the Legendary Tier Advanced grade in the main territory. This ability will increase as spellcaster levels up. Note 2. After spellcaster uses Insight Surrender, he will be allowed to rest for up to 7 days a day. The exact cultivation time depends on spellcaster's mental endurance. Note 3. The Lord can increase spellcaster's Insight Surrender success rate by increasing the bargaining chips in his hands. Note 4. Insight Surrender is risky. You have to be careful when using it. After reading it, Zhou raised his eyebrows slightly. He looked at Gaga. What's the bargaining chip to increase the success rate of Insight Surrender? He asked. Gaga smiled and explained. Your Majesty, the chips are divided into tangible and intangible. There are many tangible bargaining chips, such as valuable treasures, mist cores, divine weapons, beauties, rare materials. There are also many intangible bargaining chips. For example, whether our Lord's power is strong or not, how much official position we can give to the living beings who have been instigated by the Insight defection, or how much psychological pressure we can give to the other party. Simply put, if Your Majesty needs me to instigate the Insight defection, just tell me how many benefits you can give the other party within the scope of my authority. I will naturally act according to my ability. On the premise that I can win the other party over to our side, I will try my best to save the chips that our side will pay through my intelligence, eloquence, and professional ability. If I encounter some stupid enemies, I can even use my intelligence and eloquence to recruit the other party's troops and war resources without paying any price. I can make a deal of Insight Surrender without bargaining chip. I see. Zhou came to a realization. Isn't this a scam? I like it. Then what's the risk of Insight Surrender? Zhou asked, even though he already had a guess. In most cases, the Insight Surrender requires spellcaster to go alone. There may be accidents during this process. For example, if the Insight Surrender fails, it will bring about a fatal disaster. Another example is if we encounter difficult enemy subordinates during the Insight Surrender process. This is the risk that spellcaster and I might encounter during the process of using the Insight Surrender. But in this world, how can there be no risk in doing anything? You might even get sick from eating and drinking the most ordinary food. His Majesty is facing billions of enemies every day. The risk is billions of times greater than mine. So you don't have to worry about my safety, Your Majesty. You just need to get your subordinates to make the corresponding preparations when I undergo Insight Surrender. I only hope that there will be no worries. Leave the rest to me, Gaga said sincerely. Don't worry about that. This king will specially send a group of professionals to help you so that you won't have any worries. Zhou immediately said, "Thank you, Your Majesty. Actually, if I can become a spellcaster under a powerful lord like Your Majesty, I'll naturally have a huge advantage when I carry out Insight Surrender in the future. It'll save me a lot of effort. I think the Insight Surrender process should be very smooth and effortless in the future." Gaga smiled. Zhou chuckled and chatted with Gaga for a while about the specific usage of Insight Surrender before Gaga took his leave. Not long after he left, Aaliyah came over and said that Baiyun wanted to see him. When Zhou heard this, he asked the other party to meet him in the study. "Your Majesty, these are the total gains after today's war, as well as the overall report on the improvement of our soldiers' strength. This is the corpse of all the Scarlet God Spirits and legendary tier fog monsters." Baiyun clicked on her personal terminal and projected the report in front of the two of them. Then, she handed a spatial ring to Zhou. When Zhou saw this virtual projection, he praised it in his heart. This was a new function that his personal terminal had just updated today. Could be said to be very practical. It had to be said that as his Machina race clone continued to send Winya all kinds of new technological information from the Machina race's territory, the technology level of the Blazing Sun Kingdom was developing rapidly at every moment. He stopped thinking about it and looked at the general report. In the past 2 days, they had first eliminated the 1 billion fog monsters of the New Wind Demon Kingdom. Then, they had helped the Saha Empire eliminate about 900 million fog monsters. Then, they had fought with the allied forces of the Scarlet Army. After eliminating a total of 3.3 billion fog monsters, they had finally eliminated the 1 billion ranch monsters in the ranch plain. In total, they had killed a total of 6.2 billion fog monsters. If it was not someone who was personally involved, it was hard to imagine that this was the result of only 2 days. However, firstly, Zhou only used his advantages to crush the opponents in most situations. There would not be a situation where he could not win the battle for a long time. Secondly, with the Galaxy, a super spaceship that could travel quickly, chase, and bring its own super radar, it saved a lot of traveling time and time to chase after the enemy. Thirdly, the top combatants on Zhou's side could often kill the enemy's top combatants first, thus lowering the enemy's morale. Not long after the war began, the ordinary soldiers of the enemy lost the confidence to win. This was the prerequisite for a quick victory. Coupled with the abundance of war resources, the high individual combat quality of the soldiers, and the suppression of the combat strength of the god spirits, it resulted in the magnificent feat of Zhou's 4 billion soldiers destroying an army of more than 6 billion fog monsters in 2 days. These enemies were enhanced by the titles of the King of Loots and the Strongest Lord. They obtained a total of 87,900,000 legendary tier mist cores, 856,500,000 epic tier mist cores, more than 10.011 billion extraordinary tier mist cores, more than 14.26 billion diamond tier mist cores, more than 20.016 billion white platinum tier mist cores, more than 35.066 billion yellow gold tier mist cores, more than 88.033 billion white silver tier mist cores, and more than 165.05 billion green bronze tier mist cores, more than 800 billion skill books and 1.68 trillion equipment. The basic materials alone totaled about 30,000 trillion units. There were more than 210 million units of basic elemental gem resources, more than 60 million units of thunder element gems, more than 40 million units of life elemental gems, more than 50 million units of death elemental gems, 1,030,000,000 origin crystals, 17,706,520 green bronze tier lord talent crystal fragments, 12,500 holy spirit tier scarlet divine crystals, more than 80,000 intact dimensional cannons, more than 10,000 dimensional cannons with different degrees of damage. Zhou's gaze landed on the resources of the life elemental gems and the death elemental gems, and a look of joy appeared on his face. With so many life elemental gems and death elemental gems, I finally fulfilled another condition for my territory to advance to the epic tier elementary grade. Now that I only have 36 extraordinary tier territory tokens left, I can upgrade my territory, he muttered to himself. There were only 36 extraordinary tier territories. With his current military strength, he could easily conquer 36 beginner Crimson Kingdom. Under normal circumstances, a beginner kingdom would at most have 2 to 3 million troops. The 36 beginner kingdoms would only have 60 to 70 million troops. At most, they would have less than 100 million troops. Even if these kingdoms had God Spirit level trump cards, they should only be low-tier and mid-tier deity-level treasures. To the God Spirits of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, they were naturally not a threat. Zhou could easily deal with an enemy of this level. Then, he looked at the improvement of the army and soldiers. After 2 consecutive days of war, the level of the 4 armies under him had already increased greatly. Among them, the Kingdom Army of the Blazing Sun Army had jumped to the epic tier. Even though the Monster Army and the Dragon God Army could not compare to the Blazing Sun Army, they had reached the level of the Extraordinary Tier Kingdom Army. As an army that gathered intelligence, the Heavenly Map Army had the smallest increase in level, but it had also reached the Diamond Tier level. The greatest benefit of leveling up the army was that the effect of the army's buff and braveness had increased greatly. The Blazing Sun Army's epic tier braveness could increase the soldiers' overall strength by 80% in battle. The extraordinary tier braveness and diamond tier braveness of the other 3 legions increased their strength by 70% and 60%. This kind of improvement was shocking even for the soldiers of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Then, he looked at the list of troops behind him. Just by relying on the insight defection, Zhou had instigated a total of 236,544,581 fog monster soldiers. In addition to the 20% insight defection troops handed over to him by the Lord members of the Star Alliance, there were a total of 297,127,976 fog monster soldiers, as well as the 1.2 billion Violent Storm Spirit Class Change Certificate and 1.2 billion Yellow Gold Tier God Attendant Class Change Certificate that Bai Yun had just obtained from the Ranchland Plain. She had summoned 1.2 billion Violent Storm Spirit recruits and 1.2 billion Yellow Gold Tier God Attendant recruits through the Gate of Summoning. The total number of soldiers under his command had already reached 7,285,764,124, including the Star Alliance's current total military strength of more than 1.721 billion. Zhou's total military strength had already reached a terrifying 9 billion. Among the troops under his command, excluding the Star Alliance, there were 2,424,059,965 Black Iron Tier soldiers, 21,678,836 Green Bronze Tier soldiers, 1,728,239,680 White Silver Tier soldiers, 1,390,200,680 Yellow Gold Tier soldiers, 1,055,626,800 White Platinum Tier soldiers, 453 million Diamond soldiers, 158,598,290 Extraordinary Tier soldiers, 54 million Epic Tier soldiers, and 361,762 Legendary Tier soldiers. As for the God Spirits under him, after today's battle, their strength had also increased astonishingly. Among them, Hera's strength had advanced to the high-tier deity-level advanced grade. Zhe Wu had advanced to the mid-tier deity-level intermediate grade. Guiqiao, Qi Shen and Yuan Song had advanced to mid-tier deity-level elementary grade. Vicky, Bai Yun, Wu Xin, Feng Luo, Suen, and Luo Sheng had all advanced to the low-tier deity-level intermediate grade. Even the strength of the 4 Scarlet God Spirits had increased by a small level. And to Zhou's surprise and satisfaction, after today's battle, the Dragon King of Volcano and Destruction, Nazario, the Dragon King of War and Strength, Jilong, and the original Spirit Race, Ansel had all broken through to the low-tier deity-level elementary grade. This brought the total number of God Spirits under his command to 18. If the God Spirits outside knew about this improvement, their jaws would probably drop. However, he knew what he was doing. The reason why Blazing Sun Kingdom was able to have so many god spirits advance at the same time was of course thanks to the legendary tier Lord Talent, Blessing of the War God. But more importantly, the god spirits under Zhou had more or less used the divine spark fragment provided by the King of Lutes, and even the Book of the God Spirit. These god-tier treasures that could increase their nomological comprehension. After they were used by them, they turned into their own nomological comprehension, saving them a lot of time to comprehend the nomological laws. On this foundation, there was also the help of the huge difference in the time flow of the Reincarnation Sacred Palace. There were also various treasures that assisted in comprehending the laws. Under such circumstances, their own law comprehension and promotion energy had both met the requirements for advancement. Then their advancement would come naturally. Zhou was also very satisfied with this result. Fortunately, he had given away all the experience packs. Otherwise, if he killed randomly, he would feel good, but he would probably not be able to see such a wondrous scene of god spirits advancing one after another. Then Zhou looked at the consumption of energy in this battle. The first was the consumption of faith divine crystals. After this battle, the number of Blazing Sun Kingdom soldiers sacrificed exceeded a quarter of the total number of soldiers. In order to revive these soldiers, the clergymen had used more than half of the faith divine crystals they had previously stored. Among the god spirits on their side, 22 had also fallen. Among the 22 god spirits, there were 8 low-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirits, 4 low-tier deity-level intermediate grade god spirits, 3 low-tier deity-level advanced grade god spirits, 3 mid-tier deity-level intermediate grade god spirits, and 4 mid-tier deity-level advanced grade god spirits. This was the result of Zhou using the demonic abyss spiderweb and infinite teleportation to control the entire battlefield and try his best to protect his god spirits from dying. Otherwise, if he did not protect the god spirits on his side and only let the god spirits on his side face the scarlet god spirits who had fallen into a state of madness in a desperate situation alone, the losses of the god spirits in this battle would at least increase by 3 to 4 times. In order to revive these 22 god spirits, Zhou needed to invest 6,080 Holy Spirit Tier Faith Divine Crystals. For the sake of these Holy Spirit Tier Faith Divine Crystals, Zhou had to spend all the savings he had accumulated previously. Fortunately, after this battle, he directly obtained 12,500 Holy Spirit Tier Faith Divine Crystals. The god spirits who had died in battle were revived after all. He could still have 8,000 or 9,000 left as reserves. And in order to resurrect the fallen gods, the cardinal-level clergymen in the shelter of the Goddess of Life were so tired that they were about to faint. But even so, they probably wouldn't be able to revive for a while. The consumption of the Great Resurrection spell was too terrifying, and it was very difficult to use it frequently. When Zhou saw this, he thought for a moment and decided to go over later. After all, he also had the Great Resurrection spell. He could also contribute to this and let those gods who had sacrificed themselves for this battle revive as soon as possible. However, there was no hurry for now. Zhou continued to look at the war consumption list in front of him. Other than the cost of faith divine crystals, there was also the cost of various equipment, mist core, potions, war machines, and materials. In total, it was worth hundreds of millions of legendary tier mist cores. War was indeed a competition of finances. Zhou sighed with emotion after reading the list of losses. In the past, he didn't care about small fights. After experiencing a huge battle today, he realized that he had not earned enough. In order to cope with more war expenses in the future, he had to constantly earn mist cores and divine crystals. In addition to the above expenses, Zhou had also fulfilled his previous promise to the divine spirits. According to the results of their respective battles, he gave them all the divine artifacts they deserved. However, even so, they had only given out more than 300 low-level divine artifacts. To Zhou, it was not worth mentioning. Then, he looked at the spatial ring in his hand and entered it with his consciousness. In the huge spatial ring, there were a total of 201,366 legendary tier fog monsters and the corpses of 106 scarlet god spirits. When Zhou saw this, his breathing could not help but become heavier. Most of the legendary tier and above treasures on these enemies could directly become 3 god spirit level treasures under his King of Loots. After he extracted all these treasures, the total number of god tier treasures he had would increase by at least 100 times. At the thought of this, Zhou no longer hesitated. He directly used his will to extract their spoils of war from his spatial ring. At this moment, Zhou discovered another benefit of his will-like light realm. That was, he could easily rely on his will to extract a large number of corpses at once. Otherwise, if it was in the past, he could at most extract the spoils of war from hundreds of corpses at once. Unlike now, where 30,000 to 40,000 corpses collapsed into countless loots with a thought. In less than a minute, the 200,000 corpses were all extracted. It was extremely convenient and fast. Zhou immediately looked over. In the spatial ring at this moment, there was a dense amount of god-tier resources. Among them were more than 35 million divine crystals from low-tier to high-tier deity level. There were also more than 3,000 true god-tier elementary grade divine crystals evolved from high-tier deity level advanced grade divine crystals. In addition, there were more than 3.6 million divine artifacts that ranged from low-tier to high-tier deity level. There was also a total of about 5 million divine spark fragments, god-tier medicinal herbs, god-tier ingredients, god-tier ores, god-tier blueprints, and other treasures. After Zhou finished reading, there was only one thought left in his mind. This was too crazy. Even an elementary divine kingdom lord faction would probably not have as many divine artifacts as him, right? At this moment, Zhou even wanted to use these resources to challenge the divine kingdom's lord faction. However, after a while, Zhou calmed down. The greatest reliance of a divine kingdom lord was naturally those true god-tier existences who had lived for countless years. He had only obtained a batch of low-level divine artifacts, yet he wanted to use them to subvert the forces of the divine kingdom's lords. Wasn't this a little too whimsical? He should just focus on developing himself. Don't do things that are beyond your ability, or you will only invite disaster. Then he looked at the war report again. His gaze fell on the 8,050 billion skill books and 1.68 billion equipment. With so many war resources, I only have 70 soldiers under me now. I definitely can't digest them. With so many war resources, I only have 70 soldiers under me now. I definitely can't digest them. Zhou thought to himself. Then, he divided these equipment and skill books into 2 categories. The first was rare fine-grade skill books and fine-grade equipment. Zhou had a total of 200 billion items left and threw them into the military merit exchange system for the soldiers and god spirits to exchange for. The second type were non-fine-grade skill books and non-fine-grade equipment. For these less precious and important resources of war, Zhou opened the marketplace and threw in 100 billion pieces of equipment and 100 billion skill books. In the end, he realized that the 2 billion copies of the King of Yellow Gold class change certificate, 2 billion copies of the Violent Storm Spirit class change certificate, 100 billion copies of various skill books, and 100 billion pieces of various equipment that he had thrown into the Lord shop had already been sold. The result of the transaction also surprised him. Trade result. About 1,060 million legendary tier mist cores. There were more than 1 billion legendary tier mist cores. Good God! There were more than 1 billion legendary tier mist cores. Zhou looked at the results of his big brother's transaction and suddenly felt, don't stop. I can still fight. Let the allied forces of the Scarlet Legion come on more fiercely. I want to fight 10 more times. After a long time, he finally calmed down his warlike mood. Then, he opened the World Channel and looked at it for a while. He even spoke on the World Channel, asking the lords of Cerulean Planet how much they accepted this batch of goods. Most of the lords' replies were surprisingly the same. That was to make this kind of war commodity more violent. But even so, Zhou could tell that everyone was no longer as enthusiastic about war resources like equipment, skill books, and class advancement books. Zhou estimated that if he were to sell equipment and skill books worth 200 to 300 billion, the market for the Lords of Cerulean Planet would probably be saturated. As for the soldier-type class change certificate, This thing would probably be saturated if it was sold for another 20 to 30 billion. There were only 2 to 3 billion human lords left on the cerulean planet after experiencing the calamity of the myriad races for the past 9 days after all. This was also because Zhou controlled a large number of top-notch human lords on the cerulean planet and ordered them to gather and protect the other human lords on the cerulean planet. In addition, he kept selling top-notch war goods to the marketplace, indirectly increasing the strength of the human lords on the cerulean planet. Otherwise, this number would only be lower. The 5 human empires were the most obvious examples. Even an empire-level lord faction like them, which had a true god-tier god spirit, found it rather difficult to withstand the fearless attacks of billions of Scarlet Army soldiers. Not to mention the Lord of Cerulean Planet, who had just developed on the High Continent and did not even have a god spirit. According to the Yellow Emperor, Patriarch Lu, and White River at this point, there were already a large number of weaker bloodline races and even more lords of the myriad races who were destroyed in this terrifying calamity. On the surface, the King of 10,000 Kings event this time was to ask the lords of all races to help the local lords repel the attack of the Scarlet Forces. But in reality, the number of deaths of the lords in charge of assisting them was much more than that of the local lords. They were too weak and had not accumulated any foundation after all. If they were implicated, they would suffer heavy casualties. After this event, the number of lord of all races will probably decrease by half. But, on the contrary, I'm afraid none of the lord of all races who survived this King of 10,000 Kings event are simple. Zhou thought to himself. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. No matter how the outside environment changed, focusing on developing and expanding his lord power would always be the right choice. After that, Zhou and Bai Yi chatted for a while. Then, Zhou asked, "Has Mugu already started nurturing new soldier types?" After the mist monster designated by His Majesty was sent to the Ranchland Plain, Lord Mugu officially began cultivating it. Bai Yun said respectfully, "Let's go take a look." When Zhou heard this, he stood up and went to look for Mugu with Bai Yi. A moment later, Ranchland Plain. Zhou looked at this world that was completely different from the previous Ranchland continent. Firstly, the Ranchland continent was still there, but it was 4 to 5 times larger than before. Next, there were also a few small continents around this Ranchland continent. Even though these continents were small and there were not many of them, there were only 4 to 5 small continents in total. However, it already vaguely had the concept of a planar galaxy. Finally, Zhou could clearly feel that in this Ranchland Plain, there was a plane consciousness. It should have just been born. Its consciousness was still very young and blurry, but it could already help Mugu manage the laws of this small plane. Zhou nodded. If Mugu's Ranchland continent continued to develop like this, it was indeed very possible for it to become a small world, middle world, or even a boundless universe. Mugu, how's the arrangement of the new soldier type? Zhou asked Mugu, who was waiting respectfully beside him. Your Majesty, the new soldier type, the Yellow Talisman Dao Soldier, has been replaced with the Yellow Gold Tier God Attendants according to your Majesty's request. It has been nurtured in the monster ranches, leaving only some Yellow Gold Tier God Attendant Fog Monsters to be reared as backup ranch monsters. When dawn comes, the first batch of Yellow Talisman Dao Soldiers can be nurtured. Currently, among the 1,000 monster ranches under my management, a total of 600 monster ranches are nurturing Empire-level soldier types, Yellow Talisman Dao Soldiers. 200 monster ranches are nurturing Kingdom-level soldier types, Violent Storm Spirit. The remaining 200 monster ranches are still nurturing Mechanical Fear Falcons, Iron-Eating Bears, and Withered Trees. Mugu said respectfully, "Bring me there." Zhou nodded slightly and said, "Your Majesty, please wait a moment." Mugu said respectfully and turned to look at the road ahead. In the next second, countless fantastical scenes seemed to flash in his eyes, as if they reflected the countless locations and scenes in this Ranchland Plain. Immediately after, Zhou and Bai Yi realized that the surrounding space had suddenly changed. Then, the two of them realized that they had already arrived in front of the door of a monster ranch. Bai Yun clicked her tongue in wonder. The spatial conversion was so natural. Was this the Lord of the Plain? Zhou was not surprised. The three of them walked into the monster ranch. Soon, they saw that inside the monster ranch, balls of scarlet fog were condensing and forming. Then, yellow talisman Dao soldiers were born. Zhou's gaze landed on a yellow talisman Dao soldier. Even though this yellow talisman Dao soldier had just been born, its strength was also at the yellow gold tier elementary grade. However, even with this strength, it was considered the lowest in this monster ranch. Zhou could not even see the white silver tier and white silver tier ranch monsters at a glance. It could be seen that the current monster ranch was indeed much stronger than the monster ranch at the beginning. A text notification appeared. Monster name: Yellow Talisman Dao Soldier, Strength Level, Yellow Gold Tier Elementary Grade. Monster description: the Yellow Talisman Dao Soldier comes from the Yellow Heavens Spirit Race civilization. It is a famous Empire-level soldier type. Empire-level soldier types that had been changed by the spirit of the Yellow Heaven were born with extremely high comprehension and were especially good at comprehending the power of laws. As a result, it was easier for them to advance to God spirits. Yellow Talisman Dao soldiers were good at using the power of yellow talismans. They could allow themselves to obtain and use various nomological powers in advance before becoming a God spirit. Their battle characteristics are that they are strong in close combat and have strong bodies. Although they are not good at other aspects, their battlefield performance is enough to be ranked among the top among the many Empire-level close combat soldier types. Loot's drop rate: 20 yellow gold tier mist cores, drop rate 100%, 20 origin crystals, drop rate 100%, 1 yellow gold tier elementary grade equipment Yellow Talisman Dao Technique, Heavenly Spirit Body, drop rate 30%, 1 yellow gold tier elementary grade skill book, Heavenly Spirit Protection Talisman, drop rate 20%, 1 yellow gold tier elementary grade skill book, Heavenly Spirit Talisman, 100 Miles Wine Talisman, drop rate 20%, 1 yellow gold tier elementary grade skill book, Heavenly Spirit Consolidation Talisman, Yellow Spirit Talisman, 10%. Zhou nodded in satisfaction. When the sun rose, his soldiers could have a new Empire-level soldier type, Yellow Talisman Dao soldiers. This was the first Empire-level soldier type that could be nurtured in large quantities in his territory. As an Empire-level soldier type that specialized in close combat, it could definitely replace the Golden God Attendant that specialized in close combat. This was also why Zhou allowed Mugu to use the Yellow Talisman Dao soldier to replace the Yellow Gold Tier God Attendant. He even planned to change all the Yellow Gold Tier God Attendants in the King of the Blazing Sun's country to Yellow Talisman Dao soldiers after the class change certificate of the Yellow Talisman Dao soldier was released, maximizing the strength of his soldiers. Let your plane consciousness of the Ranchland plane nurture the ranch monsters on its own today. Come with me. Let's go to the shelter of the Goddess of Life first. Then, we'll hold a celebratory feast with the other immortals and our people who came to help. Although you didn't appear today, you contributed greatly to the victory. Zhou smiled. Without the ranch monsters nurtured by Mugu, even if he had a divine skill like insight defection, he could not have so many soldiers in such a short period of time after coming to the High Continent. All the generals and god spirits, including Zhou, understood that Mugu, who was usually silent, was actually the one who had contributed greatly. He was just unwilling to fight for credit and show off. Mugu subconsciously wanted to decline. He didn't like environments where there were too many people. On the contrary, he liked to come into contact with the fog monsters in the monster ranch. He felt free and relaxed around the fog monsters. However, when he saw Zhou's serious expression, he smiled bitterly. He ultimately did not reject His Majesty's goodwill and nodded. Yes, my lord. Zhou laughed and left the Ranchland plain with Mugu and Bai Yi. Then, he went to the shelter of the Goddess of Life. At this moment, the faces of the cardinal-level higher-ups in the shelter were a little pale because they had participated in the resurrection of the immortals. When Zhou saw this scene, he immediately took out some god-tier tonics and distributed them to them. Thank you, Your Majesty, Carol Moali and the other clergymen said respectfully in unison. Then they immediately took tonics to recover. After a while, their expressions returned to normal, and the divine power in their bodies returned to their peak state. However, the fatigue in their eyes did not dissipate. Seeing this, Zhou understood that Carol Moeli and the other clerics who had mastered the Great Resurrection spell probably wouldn't be able to use it for the time being. "How many immortals have yet to revive?" Zhou asked. "Your Majesty, there's still one low-tier deity-level intermediate grade god spirit, and 2 mid-tier deity-level intermediate grade god spirits that haven't been revived." Even though Carol Moeli's face was pale, she didn't take her physical condition seriously. "I can revive them 1 day later when I recover. You don't have to wait a day." Zhou shook his head and said, "Leave the rest of the god spirit resurrection to me." Carol Moeli and the other cardinals were stunned. Leave the rest to His Majesty? His Majesty actually knew the Great Resurrection spell too. However, the Great Resurrection spell, as a divine art, could only be mastered and used by someone with extremely high faith in the goddess of life. The Great Resurrection spell requires extremely high faith in Her Majesty the goddess to master and use it. "Your Majesty, you..." Carol Moeli hesitated. Even though he could tell that the relationship between His Majesty and the goddess of life was all right, it was a little ridiculous when it came to faith. "When would I make jokes?" Zhou smiled. Just as Carol Moeli thought, Zhou did not have much faith in the goddess of life. But he could also sense that the Great Resurrection spell ability he had obtained from the Lord Shop could indeed be used directly. Not only that, but he could also feel that if his chaotic sacred power was raised to the level infinitely close to the true god tier, it could also allow this ordinary cardinal level Great Resurrection spell that could only revive non-god spirits to revive god spirits. This was also the reason why he dared to revive the death immortal god. "Your Majesty, please." Carol Moeli nodded and led Zhou to the statue of the goddess of life. In front of the statue, there was a large bed that was emitting a faint jade-green light. A mid-tier deity-level god corpse of a young human was lying there lifelessly. Zhou could not help but be amused when he saw the corpse. An acquaintance. Wasn't this Neza who had urged Yang Jian and Sun Wukong to fight? He still had a deep impression of this mischievous young man who wanted to see the world in chaos. He suddenly recalled that before he came, Sun Wukong and Yang Jian looked distracted. It turned out that they were worried about his little brother. Zhou did not say anything. He first took out 500 Holy Spirit tier Faith Divine Crystals and placed them in front of him. Then, he used King to enter the level of a high-tier deity-level advanced grade God Spirit that was infinitely close to the true God tier. Then, he chanted the divine art incantation of the Great Resurrection spell in a low voice. The next second, he saw these 500 Holy Spirit tier Faith Divine Crystals emitting a holy white light. These white lights gathered together and gathered in one direction, as if they were calling out to an extremely distant existence. Immediately after, Zhou felt that the chaotic sacred power in his body seemed to sense the need for the Great Resurrection spell and immediately began to change automatically. In less than a blink of an eye, he discovered that about 10% of the chaotic sacred power in his body had turned into pure and flawless law of life divine power that was rich in life force. Zhou even felt that the divine power of life in his body transformed from the chaotic sacred power was much stronger and purer than the divine power of life in Carol Moeli's body. At the same time, Carol Moeli and the others next to Zhou were also staring at him in shock. At this moment, as Zhou recited the incantation of the divine art, a layer of extremely dense, pure, and gentle light of life appeared around him. Under the illumination of this light of life, these god spirits of the law of life even vaguely comprehended the path ahead of the law of life. Upon realizing this, they looked at Zhou with shock, awe, and a hint of fanaticism and yearning. At this moment, in their eyes, Zhou was like the goddess of life descending upon the supreme continent. It was as if he was the embodiment of the law of life. Zhou was also stunned. He now felt that the mysteries of the laws of life behind the Great Resurrection spell were actually revealed in front of him without any concealment, as if it wanted to tell him all its secrets. So the chaotic sacred power actually had such a use? After Zhou reacted, he felt that it was a pity. This was because he only had one commanding Lord Law skill, King. Carol Moali, it seems that you're very busy today. Ha! Otherwise, if he mastered a God Spirit level ruling Lord Law skill, it would definitely be faster and simpler for him to comprehend higher level Lord Law skills. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He continued to use the Great Resurrection spell. Soon, he felt an incomparably majestic will descend into his body from an unknown place. Carol Moali, it seems that you're very busy today. Ha! A gentle voice sounded, then turned into a surprised and confused voice. Lord of the Blazing Sun? Why is it you? Didn't your holiness allow me to use the Great Resurrection spell? Jojo was also at a loss. He thought that he could still use the Great Resurrection spell without having faith in the Goddess of Life. Apart from the chaotic sacred power, it was also because the Goddess of Life thought highly of him and allowed him to use the Great Resurrection spell. Turned out that His Holiness didn't know either, so what's going on? Jojo and the Goddess of Life fell silent. Then they suddenly thought of a possibility. Lord's Law, the Goddess of Life said faintly. No wonder it could deceive my perception, making me not know what life form used the Great Resurrection spell. I saw that the source of faith was your Blazing Sun Kingdom, so I thought that Carol Moali was the one who used the Great Resurrection spell at this level. So I sent a divine power clone to help us use the Great Resurrection spell. I didn't expect it to be like this, the Goddess of Life whispered. He looked at Jojo with a strange gaze. Jojo did not dare to speak. At this moment, he was also a little speechless. He did not expect that the root cause was actually the Lord's Law. Was this the supreme rule of a Lord? You had to obediently come over and help me cast faith-type divine arts like the Great Resurrection spell, even if you were one of the 10 master God-tier God spirits under the influence of the Lord's laws? Rule and control. The characteristics of these two Lord's laws were vividly displayed at this moment. At this moment, Jojo had a deeper understanding of the Lord's laws. At this moment, he suddenly saw the Goddess of Life looking at him with a smile. The goddess's smile that existed in mythical tier legends appeared in front of Jojo and company. Even Bayun, Carol Moali, and the other women beside him were stunned. Even though Jojo was not affected, he was secretly shocked when he saw this scene. Such an existence who had grasped the complete laws was indeed terrifying. Every move he made thousands of life forms bow down to him. In front of the smile of the Goddess of Life, even a true God tier would probably be stunned for a few seconds. Lord of the Blazing Sun, the Goddess of Life chuckled. I haven't seen you for a few days, but your comprehension of Lord's Law has already reached such a level. In the future, it won't be difficult for me to become a God spirit with the Lord's Law, right? Are you ready to advance to become a God spirit? Are you prepared to use your subject territory as the foundation of your faith? Or are you going to advance to become a Lord Law-type God spirit in another way? I'm getting ready. As for the foundation of faith, as the Lord of all races, I definitely have to use my subjects and territory as the foundation of faith. Jojo said. The Lord's Law had the dual characteristics of a Law Path God Spirit and a God Spirit who believed in the Law Path. Coupled with the power of the Lord's Law itself, once one became a God, they would be the strongest God Spirit of the same level. Needless to say, Jojo had been working hard to comprehend the extraordinary tier Lord Law skill, King. As for the path of faith, there were two conditions, which were the believer and believer territories mentioned by the Goddess of Life. The former was related to faith, while the latter was extremely useful for the stability and development of faith. Most importantly, when a life form became a god, they needed to establish a divine kingdom immediately. The foundation of a divine kingdom in reality was actually the territory of the believers. The stronger the believer's territory was, the stronger the divine kingdom would be. If the believer's territory was invaded by the enemy, the divine kingdom would also become weaker. This was also the reason why many God spirits who walked the path of laws looked down on God spirits who walked the path of faith. His most important foundation to become a god was not in his hands, but in his immobile territory and weak subjects. This was too unstable. Once he provoked a powerful enemy, the gods who walked the path of faith would not even be able to escape. However, misfortune came with blessings. Even though the god spirits who believed in the path had such flaws, this path also had many merits that the gods who believed in the path of laws envied. Firstly, it could become a god without looking at the aptitude of the person who became a god. As long as one had enough faith, they could become a god. Secondly, it was very easy for gods who believed in the path to comprehend their own faith-type law skills. Moreover, it was very simple to increase the level of their gods in the future. They only needed to continuously expand their faith. Thirdly, because the god spirits who believed in the Tao path had the protection of their believers and their own law skills, their combat strength and ability to protect themselves were often stronger than the god spirits who believed in the Tao path. Therefore, very few law god spirits of the same level dared to provoke the god spirits who believed in them. Fourthly, according to some ancient records, if a god spirit wanted to reach a higher level of the god spirit realm, they had to borrow the power of faith. Some god spirits believed in this advantage. Some god spirits were skeptical. Some god spirits disdainfully believed that these were just god spirits who walked the path of faith and shamelessly touched gold on their faces. However, Zhou, who had many bloodline inheritances, knew that this was true. The most powerful piece of evidence was, each of the 10 master god tiers had their own faith subject and faith territory. Take Tri-Tiz, the goddess of life, for example. As the goddess who controlled the law of life, all living beings within the range of his faith could be considered his believers. Even if this life form did not think that he had faith in the goddess of life, as long as he had life, he would tacitly acknowledge that he had the lowest level of faith. That was because no life form would not cherish their lives. Even those who wanted to commit suicide were equally important in their hearts. There was a saying in the myriad worlds. God spirits doted on all living beings. Other god spirits might not be the same. However, the goddess of life would definitely love all living beings. This was because all living beings were truly his believers. The goddess of life would naturally cherish and love them. If not for the fact that the concept of life encompassed too many concepts and god spirits that were derived from countless related concepts, such as fertility, medical treatment, reproduction, breeding, and even disease, suffering, gender, and war, these conceptual god spirits that did not seem to be related to the concept of life, they would have divided up most of the beliefs of the goddess of life. The goddess of life could easily break through the master god tier bottleneck and become a god among gods, supreme god realm, with the vast amount of faith from countless life forms. And it was precisely because of these prerequisites and advantages of believing in the god spirit. Therefore, an extraordinary tier profession like the Lord, who was born to lead the people, believers, and territories, believers' territory, had been known as the most suitable extraordinary tier profession to follow the path of the god spirit since the appearance of the god spirit. The girl smiled when she heard Zhou's words. Then, he didn't say anything else. After taking away the 500 Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystals, he helped Zhou use the Great Resurrection spell to revive Neza. When Neza woke up, he looked a little lost at first. Then he reacted. After knowing that he had been revived, he immediately jumped up in joy. However, in the next second, he was pressed down by a strong hand. At the same time, a voice sounded in his ear. "Don't do anything rude. The goddess of life is here." Zhou sent a voice transmission. Neza's young face stiffened. He turned his head and indeed saw the goddess of life's amiable, mysterious, and dignified face. "Neza greets the saint," Neza said respectfully. Tri-Tiz, the goddess of life, smiled and nodded. He naturally knew that the name saint meant master god tier in the cultivation civilization of the Qi practitioners. After he helped Zhou revive another low-tier deity-level intermediate grade god spirit and a mid-tier deity-level intermediate grade god spirit, Zhou left with 1,050 Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystals. After Zhou and the others sent this goddess off respectfully, Neza and the other two immortals looked at each other. Then they turned around and bowed to Zhou. "Thank you, King of the Blazing Sun, for saving my life. The three of you are too polite. This was originally agreed upon with everyone before the battle began. It's not considered a favor." Zhou waved his hand. Then, he took out 3 spatial rings and handed them to Neza and the others. He said, "These are your rewards for last night's battle, including the rewards for killing enemies and dying in battle. The three of you can take a look." When Neza and the others heard this, they immediately looked over expectantly. Then, they held their breaths because of the few immortal artifacts and divine artifacts inside. Their eyes lit up and their faces turned red, excited. This was a divine artifact that truly belonged to them. From now on, Neza, I also have a full set of celestial artifacts. Ha ha ha. Neza was very happy and decided to fight his father, who did not love him, after returning to the palace. Jojo smiled when he saw this. Then he told them about the upcoming celebratory feast. Hearing this, the three immortal gods immediately decided to participate in the celebration banquet with Jojo and the others. Jojo and the others naturally had no objections. Then they went to look for Zheng Fuguei together. Even Zhou Qingmin, who was immersed in the virtual world and playing games, was pulled out by Jojo with a bitter expression. In the end, they participated in the celebratory feast together. This celebratory banquet was held in the internal space of the 18 Galaxy spaceships. The banquet was held for all the Blazing Sun Kingdom subjects who had participated in and contributed to the war. With such a large banquet area, Jojo only found out after the celebration banquet began that the banquet had invited nearly 10 billion living beings, including soldiers, generals, lifestyle professionals, god spirits, and so on. If not for the fact that the internal world of the galaxy could accommodate 1 billion soldiers, 18 Galaxy spaceships would be more than enough to hold this celebratory feast. He would probably have to treat someone to a meal on the ground. Wenya also told Jojo that it would probably cost nearly 1 million legendary tier mist cores to hold such a huge and luxurious banquet, even if it was just once. Jojo did not care about this at all. He even asked Wenya to do her best. He was able to be so willful as someone who had just earned 1 billion legendary tier mist cores. At the banquet, a group of human immortals and immortals of the people of foreign dishes in front of him with bright eyes and began to order them. Races were watching the immortal banquet in front of them with their mouths agape. Among them, the 9 Cauldron Immortal, a Grand Unity Golden Immortal Realm Immortal, who had always been known as a glutton, looked at the rare divine quality dishes in front of him with bright eyes and began to order them. This dish is lustrous and overflowing with a purple aura. It's mainly made of the heavenly dream purple fish. I think it should be a Grand Unity Golden Immortal Realm dish, Heavenly Dream Purple Chi Fish Soup. It's said that even if you only take a bite of this dish, it will increase your cultivation at the Grand Unity Golden Immortal Realm. It can also temporarily increase your comprehension of the laws. As for this pancake, its entire body is round and glowing with golden light. Its internal energy is circulating with a hazy jade dragon phantom. It should be the famous golden immortal realm delicacy, Jade Dragon Auspicious. After eating it, it's said that it can increase some luck. When breaking through, it can increase the success rate of breaking through. It even has a certain support effect on Golden Immortal Realm cultivators, breaking through to the Grand Unity Golden Immortal Realm. As for this soup, let me smell it first. Hiss! Why do I smell the smell of the supreme primordial essence? That's a delicacy condiment at the Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal Realm that can only be obtained by Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals in the Chaos Mystic Realm. Could this be a Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal Realm delicacy? The more the 9 Cauldron Immortal spoke, the more excited he became. His face turned completely red. He had dominated the food world for tens of thousands of years, but this was the first time he had seen such a feast. It was worth it living for so long. When the surrounding immortal gods saw this old glutton, the 9 Cauldrons old man, say that these dishes were all precious divine grade dishes, their eyes widened. These high and mighty gods had rarely seen so many divine quality dishes together, let alone Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal Realm dishes. Even His Holiness the Yellow Emperor and the others rarely ate it. When the immortals thought of this, they silently raised their cutlery and began to eat. In the beginning, they were still very calm, but gradually they began to speed up their eating speed. Who would be polite to others when their future was at stake? Jojo smiled. This 9 Cauldron Immortal was indeed knowledgeable to be able to recognize so many god-tier dishes. As for this god-tier dish, it was naturally not made by the chefs in his territory. Instead, he had specially sent someone to invite it over from the Night Temple. It was a pity that the other party was not a true god spirit level chef. He only had some experience in handling god-tier ingredients. He could skillfully make fake god-tier dishes according to the way ordinary extraordinary tier dishes were made. Even though it was a little wasteful, there was nothing he could do. After all, it was difficult for the entire human race to find a true divine chef. Fortunately, Zhou had obtained a lot of divine quality ingredients through the King of Lutes, so he did not care about this consumption at all. After the feast, the host and guests were all happy. At this moment, the sky was already bright. After these immortals finished eating, they came in front of Zhou and bade him farewell. It was not that they did not want to stay any longer, but the calamity of the myriad races had not passed. As the champions of their respective human factions, they needed to return to the human camp they were guarding quickly to protect the humans from the outside world. When Zhou saw so many god spirits bidding farewell to him, he understood what they were thinking. He also sent out 5 galaxy ships to send these god spirits back to their respective human encampments. The immortals had a good impression of Zhou, the human lord with potential, strength, appearance, and style of doing things. Now that he had experienced Zhou's appropriate and thorough arrangements, his good impression of Zhou immediately improved. Lord of the Blazing Sun, if you need our help again in the future, don't stand on ceremony. I, Old Sun, will definitely be the first to come and help. Sun Wukong walked over and said. At this moment, after seeing Zhou display his might on the battlefield, this unruly great sage's attitude was no longer as casual as before. That's for sure. But this signature. Zhou stretched out his right hand and a pen and paper appeared in his hand. He looked at Sun Wukong with a smile. Sun Wukong. He scratched his monkey head. Why couldn't he get over the matter of the signature? What to do? He had no choice but to take it. He grabbed a pen and wrote his name very seriously on the signed paper. After signing, Sun Wukong heaved a sigh of relief. The process of signing an autograph made him feel more tired than beating up 3 Yongjian. However, when Zhou took it and looked at it, a strange smile appeared on his face. This handwriting was a little difficult to explain in a few words. Forget it. Forget it. He was the great sage. Why should he care about such trivial matters? Thank you, great sage. Zhou smiled. It's a small matter, just a small matter. Sun Wukong smiled and waved his hand. At this moment, Yang Jian and Neza walked over. Thank you, Your Majesty Blazing Sun, for saving my little brother's life. Yang Jian is extremely grateful. In the future, if Your Majesty has any requests, you can send a message to the Great Xia Empire's river entrance or the Heavenly Barbarian Empire's river entrance in the primordial world. Yang Jian usually cultivates in these 2 places. As long as Yang Jian knows that Your Majesty needs Yang Jian, he will definitely come to help immediately. Yang Jian cupped his fists respectfully. So is Neza. If Your Majesty needs anything, feel free to ask Neza. Neza followed closely behind. Senior Immortal and Marshal Zhongtan are too polite. Then I'll do as you say, Zhou said. Then, he also asked Yang Jian and Neza for their autographs. They clearly knew their influence in the myriad worlds, so even though they were a little surprised, they still autographed for Zhou readily. After Zhou looked at the signatures of the 2 deities and compared them to the great sage's signature, he could not help but smack his lips. The difference was a little big. Forget it. Forget it. He's the great sage. After the immortals left, Zhou turned around and was about to eat nearby when he saw a shadow descend from the sky and land in front of him. It was a mighty and domineering black-red dragon more than 10,000 meters tall. It was surrounded by black-red magma and smoke. A pair of red eyes were hidden in it, like a dragon god in flames staring at all life forms. It had an ancient flaming crown on its head like a volcano, and its body was covered in a black-red ferocious and domineering dragon god armor. Originally, Nazario's title was Dragon King of Volcano and Destruction. Now that he had become a god spirit and comprehended the power of the law of annihilation in his body, His title of hero had officially advanced to the dragon god of annihilation. Zhou smiled. What's wrong, old buddy? In terms of who he had the best relationship with in the entire territory and had the deepest relationship. Bai Yun, who had followed him from the beginning and risked her life for him, was one of them. Nazario, who was once the guardian of his territory and had made great contributions to him in expanding his territory, had helped him through the most difficult novice period. However, as the number of experts in his territory increased, Nazario, who was gradually overshadowed by other experts, could be considered the second master. After the baptism of the dragon transformation pool, those wyverns have all transformed into pure-blooded dragons. Nazario's deep and dignified voice sounded in Zhou's heart. Incorporate them all into the dragon god army. This way, your dragon god army will have 268 pure-blooded dragons. Focus on nurturing these pure-blooded dragons. Your dragon god army's future combat strength won't be inferior to the blazing sun army. Zhou said. These words were not empty words. Every pure-blooded dragon was an existence that could fight tens of thousands of people alone on the battlefield. A low-tier deity-level elementary-grade dragon like Nazario could easily destroy a country by itself. Therefore, the potential of the future dragon god army was indeed not inferior to the blazing sun army. Yes, your majesty. Nazario nodded. Then, the man and the dragon did not speak. Nazario. Zhou pondered for a few seconds and suddenly asked, what path of laws do you want to take in the future? Do you want to take the path of the divine dragon of destruction? He still remembered that Nazario had 1% of the destruction dragon god bloodline in his body. And the divine dragon of destruction bloodline was a true god-tier advanced grade bloodline. Master, I don't want to walk the path of the divine dragon of destruction's law of destruction. Nazario said gloomily. That's his path. If I follow his path, and if I meet him in the future, I will definitely be suppressed by him. I don't want to be suppressed by he. I want to surpass him. I want to walk my own path as the dragon god, as the strongest dragon god. When Nazario said this, the obsession in its voice was shocking. Do you have a goal in terms of laws? Zhou asked. Not yet. Nazario was at a loss. He had only been born for a short period of time. Even though he was now a low-tier deity-level dragon god, and had activated a vast amount of dragon inheritance, he was still a kid. This kind of disadvantage in temperament could not be improved with inheritance. It required a long time to make up for it. Fortunately, the time world was slowly making up for Nazario's shortcomings. Zhou fell into deep thought when he heard that. Hesitation appeared on his face from time to time. After a while, he looked up at Nazario. I have a top-notch God Spirit inheritance in my hands. If you're willing to accept this God Spirit path, not to mention surpassing the divine dragon of destruction, even becoming one of the top 10 master god tiers or even becoming a supreme god realm would give you a glimmer of hope. But Zhou was about to talk about the shortcomings of this God Spirit path. I'm willing. Upon hearing this, Nazario's fiery red dragon eyes immediately lit up, as if two small stars were emitting a scorching divine light in his dragon eyes. Master, I want this God Spirit inheritance. Don't be anxious. Listen to me first. This God Spirit inheritance isn't that simple. Upon hearing this, Zhou explained the pros and cons of the inheritance of the God Spirit, the juggernaut of the abyss, to Nazario in detail. Master, are you saying that if I rely on the divine inheritance of the juggernaut of the abyss and reach the stage of true god tier or master god tier in the future, it's very likely that I'll be controlled by the abyss will? Nazario thought for a while and said, even if you're not controlled, your freedom is probably in the hands of the other party. This God Spirit path was created by the abyss will after all. Zhou acknowledged. Then it's fine. Nazario grinned and said, the growth of the dragon race's strength is very long. I believe that by that time, Master will definitely be unbelievably powerful. At that time, even an existence like the Abyss Will that is extremely close to the Supreme Will, Master might be able to easily deal with it or have the strength to bargain with it. Then, I won't have to worry about the hidden problems and hidden dangers of the God-Spirit path of the juggernaut of the abyss. Even if Master doesn't grow to that level by then, I'll at most suppress the increase in my strength and prevent myself from advancing to the true God tier or Master God tier level. It's very difficult to increase my strength. But isn't it easy to suppress my strength? Zhou was stunned. That's right. When Nazario's strength increased to the point where he had to face the abyss will, he might already be incomparably powerful or have a trump card that could allow him to negotiate peacefully even when facing the abyss will. At that time, Nazario's safety would naturally be guaranteed. Even if his strength had not increased to the point where he could negotiate with the abyss will, at most, he could ask Nazario not to increase his strength for the time being. When he had enough strength to negotiate with the abyss will, he could just let Nazario continue to increase his strength. Thinking of this, Zhou smiled. Then take this book of the God Spirit. Zhou took out the juggernaut of the abyss book of the God Spirit from his king's treasure box and handed it to Nazario as he spoke. When Nazario saw the book of the God Spirit, he immediately became excited. With a thought, he saw the book of the God Spirit immediately disappear from Zhou's hands. He placed it into his spatial treasure. When Zhou saw this, he said, "You don't have to follow us out to battle today. Just stay in the territory and accept the divine inheritance of the juggernaut of the abyss." "Yes, Your Majesty." Nazario was a little hesitant, but in the end he agreed. The current Blazing Sun Kingdom was indeed not the same as before. Every war required the strongest combatant, him, to be present in Blazing Sun City. Even if he didn't appear on the Blazing Sun Kingdom's battlefield, the other god spirits stronger than him could still win battles for their master and the Blazing Sun Kingdom. They didn't have to worry about any accidents happening without him. Thinking of this, his eyes became firm. I must return to the position of the strongest combat power beside master, even surpassing experts like Qi Xiantian, Guoqiao, and Suan. He had once been lonely and depressed because of the appearance of these experts, but now that he had the inheritance of this master god tier advanced grade god, he would definitely return to the peak and follow by his master's side again, becoming the most powerful pet and subordinate by his side. Otherwise, he would be letting down the book of the god spirit. After that, Nazario did not continue to talk to Zhou. After bidding farewell to Zhou, he returned to the base of his dragon god army and began to use the juggernaut of the Abyss Book of Divinity to accept this top-notch master god tier inheritance. Good luck, Nazario. I miss the days when you protected me and brought me up, Zhou thought to himself as he watched Nazario leave. But then again, even though it was not good to leave such a top-notch god spirit inheritance, regardless of merit, to pets related to him, firstly, the juggernaut of the Abyss's divine inheritance was extracted from the true god-tier Abyss corpse that the Yellow Emperor and the others had given him. It had nothing to do with the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Secondly, as the saying went, one should choose the best and not avoid relatives. Nazario was extremely talented and had the bloodline of a top-notch true god-tier. Zhou believed that after Nazario used the juggernaut of the Abyss Book of the God Spirit, his performance would definitely not be any worse than those top genius subordinates after using the Book of the God Spirit. When Zhou came back to his senses, he thought of something else. He thought for a moment and called Zhao Changshu over. Then, he handed over the 4 special building blueprints he had obtained from killing the Eye of the Heaven's anger on the battlefield last night. Even though these 4 special building blueprints were not as effective as the Dragon Transformation Pool and had a huge effect on the development of the territory, they could also increase the overall strength of the Sun Kingdom by a small margin. After Zhao Changshu left excitedly with the 4 special building blueprints, Zhou sent someone to call the Dragon Lady Lord of the Dragon Blood Kingdom over. A moment later, Dragon Lady Lord used the teleportation array to come to the Blazing Sun Kingdom and meet Zhou. Last night, when she followed the army of the Blazing Sun Kingdom to crusade against the Scarlet Army's Alliance Army, under a wave of epic tier insight defection, she had directly induced more than 15 million fog monster soldiers from an Empire-level Scarlet Army. Even if she had to hand over 20% of her troops to the Blazing Sun Kingdom, she would still be able to obtain more than 12 million soldiers. With just one insight defection, Her Dragon Blood Kingdom's total military strength had increased by more than 2 to 3 times. Such an astonishing insight defection reward made her so excited that she almost fainted on the spot. At that moment, Dragon Lady Lord felt as if she was in a dream, felt unreal. It was not until more than 12 million soldiers stood in front of her that her heart finally relaxed. This was the truth. She was extremely certain. At the same time, she was very glad that she had chosen to join the Lord of the Blazing Sun and become his subordinate. Otherwise, how could he have obtained such a shocking harvest? She finally understood why did the Lords of the Star Alliance brag about how good it was to become a subsidiary territory of the Radiant Sun Kingdom every day. At first, she thought that these people were exaggerating. Now that he had personally experienced it, he knew that it was not fake. Even though becoming a subsidiary territory meant that these lords had given up on fighting for the Lord of all races, the benefits were real. The Dragon Lady Lord believed that if she posted this experience on the World Channel and let all the lords of Cerulean Planet know how much she had gained, more than 99% of the lords of Cerulean Planet would probably give up their status as lords and be willing to become citizens of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. She could obtain more than 10 million troops in the face of an insight defection. Who could resist such temptation? Wasn't this just recruiting workers? Which adult with some experience had never been a worker? This was equivalent to a 10 million yuan annual salary appearing in front of an ordinary person and telling him that he only needed to work as a security guard to get this money. 99% of adults would probably agree without hesitation. Dragon Lady Lord even felt a little regretful. If she had known that there were so many benefits to being the Lord of the Blazing Sun's subordinate, she would have long sought refuge with the Lord of the Blazing Sun. By now, she might already have more than 100 million soldiers and become the Lord of the Blazing Sun's trusted aide. Even if she could not become the Lord of all races in the future, she could definitely become a Lord who dominated an area. Now that she recalled, the seat of the Lord of all races could only be occupied by one Lord. Even if she had the Dragon Blood Queen, a top epic tier Lord talent that could summon wyverns, would he really be able to become the unattainable Lord of all races? Not to mention the Lord of all races who came from top-notch bloodlines, even the Lord of all races who came from top-notch bloodlines with top-notch Lord talents. As far as she knew, there were at least 100 human lords on the Cerulean planet who had Lord talents that were on par with her or even stronger. In such an internal environment, it could be said that her chances of standing out and even becoming the Lord of all races were very slim. Then what was the point of her continuing to fight? Should the other top lords become stepping stones on the path of the Lord of all races? Since that was the case, he might as well properly position himself. Enjoy wealth and power at the level of a king? If he couldn't become the Lord of all races, wouldn't it be good to be a top-notch lord or a subordinate of the Lord of all races and enjoy wealth and power at the level of a king? At the very least, he was much more confident in doing this than ascending to the position of the Lord of all races. After figuring this out, the Dragon Lady Lord immediately felt much more relaxed. She even felt that the High Continent's war-filled environment was a little adorable. "Your Majesty, what can I do for you?" The Dragon Lady Lord looked at the Lord of the Blazing Sun's godlike handsome face and said with a hint of infatuation in her eyes, "How many wyverns do you have now? How many wyverns can hatch in your wyvern nest in a day?" Jojo went straight to the point. The Dragon Lady Lord was extremely intelligent. She immediately figured out what His Majesty wanted to do. However, there was no unwillingness in her heart. She immediately said, "Your Majesty, I still have about 156 wyverns. As for my wyvern nest, it has just been upgraded to Diamond Tier Elementary grade with the territory. Currently, it can produce 7 wyverns a day. However, if we invest some specified soldier-type resources into the wyvern's nest, such as yellow gold, diamonds, jewelry, and other soldier types that the subdragons are interested in, my wyvern's nest can produce at most 20 wyverns a day." Dragon Lady Lord said truthfully. Jojo's eyes lit up. Yellow gold, diamonds, jewelry? He was not lacking in this aspect at all. Previously, be it the King of Yellow Gold or the Gold God Attendant, they had provided him with a large amount of gold, raw gold, and other mineral resources. Not to mention that the treasure vaults of the kingdoms that he had conquered had also provided him with a large amount of yellow gold tier, diamonds, jewelry, and other resources. I can provide you with sufficient soldier-type resources and let your wyvern nest produce wyverns with all its might. However, the 20 wyverns produced by your wyvern nest every day need to be transferred to me. In return, for every 20 wyverns you transfer to me, I will also provide you with a pure-blooded dragon. If you're willing to hand over all 156 wyverns in your hands to me, I'll also trade with you 7 pure-blooded dragons in the same way. I'll give you the rest after you make up for the remaining 4 wyverns. However, let me make it clear first. This transaction is not indefinite. After a certain stage, I might not continue to buy your wyvern. At that time, this transaction might stop for the time being until I feel that I can do it again. Then, I'll continue this exchange. What do you think? Jojo said.